What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Armando Marsal podcast. This is episode number 144. I'm your host, Armando Marsal. You can find all of my work over at fantasyguru.com. Follow me on the Twitter machine at Armando_Marsal, as well as on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Mind of Marsal. Before jumping into it, I just want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. I greatly appreciate you all. Remember, folks, if you're enjoying the podcast, enjoying the episodes, enjoying the content, please make sure you follow, rate, review, like, wherever it is you're consuming the podcast. Welcome back to the show. For those of you who have been tuning in, for those first-time listeners, welcome as part of our division by division series, recapping the 2025 season and looking ahead at the 2026 season. Today, we are shifting our focus into the NFC North. We'll be breaking down each team as it stands right now. We'll be looking at free agency, the impact of some of the coaching changes across the division, and then taking a look at team needs and some priorities here as we are during free agency and heading to the NFL draft. As usual, with me to break it all down, my guy Tyler Buecher. How's it going, brother?
Doing good over here, man. We got a rainy spring day, so I'm not going outside frolicking. We're in here. We're hitting some football. Ready to talk, man.
Yeah, man. I saw the forecast, and we're expecting some rain down here too in South Florida, man. Apparently, it's April. And we're expecting a cold front here, so I don't know what the hell's going on with this weather, to be honest with you. But apparently, we're gonna get some. It feels like the summer already, right? That's why I'm wearing the tank top. But it feels like the summer out here. It's like in the upper 80s, humidity. But then all of a sudden, we might get a cold front. I don't know, man. I don't understand it. But you know what? The sun's out. That's a good thing, Tyler. We got a lot of football to talk about here. This was a fun division. The NFC North. We're going to be breaking down all show long here. Before we jump into it, my son asked me, dude. So I have to, I have to give him a shout out. He asked me before I got on, never does it. He goes, "Hey, Dad, give me a shout out on the podcast." So just shout out to my son, Armando Jr., dude. Hey, I don't know. He just asked me for it, so I'm just, doing it, man. So shout out to the little man there, if he is
Yeah.
watching this. Yeah, right. Like, he had a good basketball game yesterday. Maybe he wanted me to say that, but yeah, he had a good little game of basketball yesterday. The team won by 1 point. It was a fun game, thriller.
Nice.
But just a great performance by all the kids, really. So just shout out to them and shout out to the little man there. So, all right, Tyler, you and I have been doing this now. We already went through the entire AFC. For those who haven't heard it, episodes of 140, 141, 142, and 143, all covering each division there in the AFC. We're shifting gears, as I said before. We're going to go into the NFC, and we're breaking the NFC North first here for this NFC series. And this was a fun division, man. Like Chicago Bears won the division 11-6. I think they surprised a lot of people last year. And then everyone had a winning record. The Green Bay Packers finished 9-7-1. The Vikings finished 9-8. The Lions finished 9-8. I think you could say it was disappointing seasons for everyone here in this division outside of the Bears. I think expectations for Green Bay was high. I think expectations for Minnesota were pretty high as well. And I think everyone liked Detroit going into this, into last season as maybe the favorite in that division and a team that could possibly make a run. Once again, the defense was an issue there in Detroit. They battled injuries once again, like they did the year before, and it was just not the season that this team was hoping for here. We're going to talk about all of that here. But overall thoughts on this division, looking back at last year and, what your expectations were and, the results. Were you surprised by any of these performances?
Yeah, I think you highlighted it really well in terms of just looking at the NFC North as a whole. Every team here above 500. The Lions probably the biggest fall from grace in terms of, I believe they were a 15-win team the season prior. Seeing them drop down, pretty notable. But yeah, I mean, this NFC North and the NFC West, I mean, these were the two powerhouses in the NFC last season. So seeing a bunch of NFC West squads making those wild card spots, kind of much of the chagrin of the NFC North teams here in this division. What do we like here? I mean, I think we see a lot of teams here that are on the rise. Like we don't see really any teams that are kind of transitioning towards a sour note. A lot of these guys seem optimistic in terms of their future outlooks for, especially when we start looking at 2026. So I think this is a fun one to talk about because there's just a healthy competition between all these squads, a long history between all these squads, and they're all kind of trending upwards at the exact same time.
Yeah, this is one of those divisions that I look at, and it's like, we've talked about, the AFC East, and I feel like it's a very unbalanced division where there's two powerhouses and two really bad teams. You start looking at division by division, there's always like one team, right? Like that's kind of, it's not really there. This is one of those divisions where it's really anyone's game. Like I think and I think the fact that all teams finish above 500 despite playing each other twice a year, I mean, speaks volumes of how good these teams are and you know how competitive these teams are. So for me, this is one of the most interesting divisions. I think it could go either way. I know, you know, the Bears won it last year. They've positioned themselves, you know, to be good for the future here. I think, you know, when you look at, you know, what we saw last year, and if we continue to see Caleb Williams grow, they positioned themselves really good in this division. But I don't necessarily look at them and saying, "Oh, they're the favorites going into the, you know, this year." I don't. I think it's really anyone's game. I think these are all good teams. These teams have good foundations. You know, there's good coaches across this division here. So I'm just, for me, this is a fun division to talk about. It's a fun division to watch. And you're going to see, I think, a lot of good football from each and every one of these teams here, Tyler. You and I always go, you know, we go in alphabetical order. So without question, Chicago Bears is the first team we're going to talk about here. Again, this was one of the most surprising teams of the NFL last year. Caleb Williams took a step forward, you know, last season. The big takeaway here, I guess I would say, you know, entering this season, they did trade away DJ Moore. He was a big part of their offense last year. I mean, I know it was, you know, up and down as far as week to week production when it came to Moore, but still someone that accounted for a 16% target share there. Had his moments, flourished at times. Interested to see what this offense is going to look like without him. And then they really haven't added anyone else as far as impactful at the receiver position. So I'm interested to see if they do anything there. But um, last year's thoughts on Chicago, you know, this offense really got going and it looked really good at times. And I think that run block, that offensive line did a phenomenal job. I know we're going to give a lot of credit to Caleb Williams and everything he did, but the offensive line did a phenomenal job. Odunze made a huge impact there in this offense. You know, you can obviously talk about Loveland. He was incredibly impactful here in this offense, and I think there's a lot to build off of, right? I think, you know, despite maybe falling short of their expectations as a team last year and where they wanted to go. I think it was a successful season, and I think there's a lot to build off of. So, looking forward to see how this team transitions from that 2025 season to that 2026 season. But thoughts on this offense? You know, we could start at Caleb Williams and his growth. You know, with the new offense coordinator last year.
Yeah, keep in mind this is the first time we've seen this Ben Johnson offense in full. Prior, it had been in Detroit, but we finally got to see him as the head coach. And man, what a great first year to win the division, to make it far in the playoffs. They look great. I thought this was a lot of offense. A lot of offenses don't always hit the ground running. I think we talked about that with the Jaguars in our most recent pod. Chicago is kind of similar, where they didn't always have the cleanest first starts to the game, but they were among the best in terms of second half finishes, comeback wins. Just they closed games really well. 11-6 in the division. We saw their offensive coordinator Declan Doyle took the offensive coordinator gig with Baltimore. So now we've got Press Taylor, who was promoted internally. He was their pass game coordinator. So that signifies to me very minimal changes in terms of any kind of scheme or personnel usage or play calling. Starting with Caleb, I agree with you. It was a nice step forward for him in year two. 3,900 yards, just shy of that 4,000 mark everyone was talking about. Fantasy quarterback 8, 19.0 fantasy points per game, and we saw him make big plays and big moments. Fantasy is one thing though, but I'm still a little bit hesitant to call him the next big thing, because when I look at, like, when I zoom in on him, I'm like looking at like what happened between year one and year two, and the big difference in my eyes was the lack of sacks. He had 68 sacks in year one, 24 sacks in year two, like a 10 point something percentage sack rate down to 4 points percentage. Um, but that pressure didn't simply go away just because he wasn't getting sacks. Williams pivoted. So instead of succumbing to the pressure in the form of sacks, we saw his accuracy greatly suffer. He was quarterback 42 out of 44 qualifying in completion rate when pressured, 39.5%. He was bottom 5 in catchable throw rate, bottom 2 in catchable throw rate on throws of 10 plus air yards. So very eager to see what happens in year 3 and how that accuracy gets cleaned up. They've got a full offseason to work on that. I'm hoping we see a combination of more Caleb rushing, which we saw at times. This dude can slingshot himself really quickly up that line whenever he's pressured. Really elusive runner. And I'm hoping for more checkdowns too, because Caleb didn't often play in the short pass game. It was generally more in the intermediate range. And then you can also factor in that the Bears were top 5 in drop rate. So the receivers didn't help him that much either. Ben Johnson already got a quote from him saying that catching will be a point of emphasis here in the early spring. So look, the trajectory for Caleb Williams looks great. He's surrounded in terms of the environment, strong play caller, tremendous offensive line, fantastic weapons. This is as good of a situation as you can ask for. We just really need to see him take a step forward and make that leap, put in that work. So I think Bears fans should be really excited about his potential, but I do still think there's plenty of room for him to grow.
Yeah, I agree 100%, right? Like, I think the big takeaway is he took fewer sacks, but you mentioned the numbers, right? Like, he was third in bad pass attempt percentage, like, or bad passes percentage. He was bottom two in on target percent. Like, it's just, it was not great, right? Like, on the surface, it looked good. And from a fantasy standpoint, like, it looked good, right? Sure. But again, football, like the actual NFL football and fantasy are two very different things. I was lower on Caleb Williams than most. I'll say this, based on the step and the leap he took last year, I think I could be wrong here, right? But like you said, I still think there are some little things in his game that he needs to really work on in order to take that other step that I think he's still hasn't taken that could take. He did flash in the men's ceiling, right? In my opinion, he showed his ability to make some throws that a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL cannot make, on the run and all of that stuff. There's no denying his arm strength. So, and there's no denying at the end of the day, like one of my biggest questions was his leadership, and I think he did take a step forward in that department as well last year. So I was very excited to see that. From a fantasy standpoint, yes, sure, you can invest in him without question. From an NFL standpoint, and to say that he's the answer long term, permanently for the Bears, and going to be the guy that's going to take them to the championship that they want to take them. That to me remains to be seen. The verdict is still out there, but definitely taking steps forward. And I think if there's a coach that's going to be able to get the best from Caleb Williams, it's Ben Johnson. He just did a phenomenal job there in his first season with Chicago. So again, guys, we talk about this all the time. Coaching matters. Like, and you saw, and I'm not going to say it was huge, but we'll talk about it. We saw Detroit's offense not look the same when Ben Johnson's not there. Like at the end of the day, we're not that same offense, in my opinion. There. Looking at the running back position here. So when you look at this backfield, we had DeAndre Swift, we had Kyle Monangai, who a late season emergence there. I don't see anything changing here. Like, do you see much changing? Like, we saw this in Detroit when Ben Johnson was there. We saw a thunder lightning situation with David Montgomery, Jameer Gibbs. I think they're going to utilize both of these running backs here in 2026. What are your thoughts on this backfield?
So they didn't invest a ton in Roshan. I'm not sorry, not Roshan. Pardon me. Manungai. I believe he was a seventh round pick, if I'm not mistaken, out of Rutgers. Not the best profile. I wouldn't be shocked if they did try to improve that position, the RB2 slot. Keep in mind, DeAndre Swift and Roshan Johnson, both those guys are on the final years of their contracts right now. So maybe we see some kind of moves for the future in terms of this team. Like, I mean, the Lions had David Montgomery and they spent the 12th overall pick on Jameer Gibbs. Like, this is a team that, or I'm sorry, this is an offensive scheme that would like to utilize multiple backs. And we saw it last year. I think the Bears reinvesting in their offensive line last year to help Caleb's sack problem also teed up the run game for a ton of success. They finished the year top 6 in both EPA per rush and rush success rate. DeAndre Swift returned to the 1,000-yard club. From an advanced stats lens, RB13 in explosive run rate, RB11 in success rate, RB20 in rush yards over expectation. There are a lot of good stats that he was at least a rock solid producer in, if not a strong producer in. In fact, he had the second lowest stuffed run rate among all 49 backs with 100 plus carries. So that was a very good thing. Like at worst case, he was still getting you 3 to 4 yards when you needed him. So I'm not sure if they move on from Swift specifically, but I am interested to see if they try to add somebody of note as that RB2, possibly for this year, possibly for the future.
Yeah, I think they definitely could use it. I was impressed with Monangai. I'll be honest. I thought he did well. But again, you can always improve the position, especially in a backfield like this one where they're going to be utilizing two backs. Roshan Johnson, talk about disappointment there, right? Like, I don't know if you had any expectations for him last year. I know it went into the season injured, but man, like I did think he was going to get some opportunities there as the backup, and that just never panned out. Like, were you surprised about that?
Yeah, I thought stylistically we may see Swift and Roshan go one for one in terms of like replacements. But instead, we did see the more lightning thunder kind of combo, where I thought Roshan emulated what Swift brought to the table a little bit more than what Roshan does. So I thought in terms of like consistency, they'd use Roshan a bit more, but they elected to go with two contrasting styles of runners, which has pros and cons to it. Clearly for Chicago, it was a pro.
Yeah. They did lose some, key defenders on free agency. I did want to mention that. So they lost Trayman Edmonds, Nashon Wright, Kevin Byard, and Dominic Robinson. They also, aside from trading away DJ Moore, they lost Zacchaeus there in the receiving group there. So they are down two receivers. And then they have beefed up. Okay, so like they have added players here. They added Devin Bush, Neville Gilmore or Gallimore, I'm sorry. Kobe Bryant, they added the safety there. And then they kept Braxton Jones, the offensive tackle. So that's some of the free agency moves that we've seen here from Chicago. Um, let's talk about this receiving group because that's that's kind of why I went into that direction because I wanted to point out they did lose multiple receivers. You have Moore, 16% target share, Zacchaeus, 13% target share. I think it's Odunze and Burden who are going to see the benefits here. They're going to be the 1-2 punch here. Interesting to see though, do they add a third guy here? Are they going to roll with these two and then trust Loveland as their, maybe their third or second pass catcher here in this offense? What are your thoughts here in this receiving group, Tyler? And then do you think they add anyone here?
I think it'll probably be pretty concentrated between Odunze, Burden, and Loveland. We got a quote recently from Ben Johnson saying that Loveland and Burden were going to be a big part of what they do going forward. So maybe that's just kind of him recapping how the rookies did. But throw those guys in with Odunze, and I think that's a pretty strong trio of receivers that can attack all levels of the field. Odunze, vertical guy, 14.2 yard ADOT in 2024, 14.5 ADOT in 2025. So basically the same thing, seeing as that vertical guy. His catch rate did go down. I think a byproduct of Caleb's inaccuracies on 10 plus yard attempts when pressured. But his yards per reception spiked, as did his yards per route run, both career highs. I also love that the way Ben Johnson utilized these guys. He put Odunze in the slot at a 40% rate. A 6'3", 220-pound receiver. He was playing the big slot role that we like to watch because you get a lot of mismatches that way. So I think he's actually a quiet dynasty buy right now, where Odunze may not have the flash and allure of some of the rookies like Burden and Loveland, but Odunze was still a top 10 draft pick. But he's coming off a quiet 44 receptions last year, where maybe you're not paying top dollar, maybe you're just paying fair market price. But I think that fair market price for Odunze a year from now could be increased in terms of value. So I wouldn't mind trying to go after Odunze in Dynasty. Uh, Burden and Loveland, these are two soaring rocket ships right now in terms of Dynasty ADP. Like you're gonna have to pay the iron price right now, but I still think it's fine to pay it as it goes up. I was really impressed with Burden. He was one of my favorite prospects entering last year's class, a 5-star prospect entering Missouri. Big production there, big ceiling. We saw like him close out the year with a really, really strong performances as the season progressed. And now that DJ Moore's in Buffalo, he's going to have an open runway for more routes, snaps, and just overall production. And I'd argue that the ceiling for Burden could be a little bit higher than Odunze, with him sporting a little bit of a lower ADOT, makes him much more of a fantasy friendly kind of area to accrue volume. 2.69 yards per out run as a rookie. That's super impressive. So I like these two wideouts. I don't really think you need to add a third of note. I'll add that they picked up Khalif Raymond from the Lions as like a cheap guy. Got some rapport with Ben Johnson, so I kind of understand the move. But that signifies to me that they're pretty content with what they have in the receiver room.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more with you with Odunze. He's entering year three. He played 12 games last year, but he had 90 targets, man. He had 100 targets as a rookie. I think he would have been well over the 120 mark, 115 mark here had he played all 17 games. I think he's going to continue to do you think he's going to be their number one wide receiver in 2020? Like, do you think he's going to be the go-to, like the primary target, or do you think they're actually going to try to really spread the ball evenly between he and Burden as far as receivers are concerned? I know Loveland's role is going to be significant too.
I'd argue all three are probably going to be close to that low 20% mark. Like I think that
Yeah,
it's pretty going to be concentrated between those three.
I'm thinking 18 to 22% target share between them, like pretty consistently.
Yeah.
I agree with you, man. I think Odunze is going to. I think he's going to continue to produce. I think he's going to take another step forward. Entering year three, man. Usually receivers, sometimes it takes a couple of years. I know back in the day, when I first started covering fantasy, the third year receiver was a big thing. It's no longer a big thing. They're hitting the ground running nowadays. But you never know. I think a big year is in order for him here. I agree with you, Luther Burton. You look like I like to look at, obviously I look at things from an entire season lens and I break it down by, maybe the first half of the season, maybe the first quarter of the season. And I was very impressed with his numbers down the stretch. He was much more involved. Granted, Odunze was out, but he was so much more involved. It looked like the chemistry was really developing there with him and Caleb Williams. He had some pretty big games down the stretch as well. So I like to look at, especially the rookie, how he closes out the season and what his role was at the end of the season, not necessarily the beginning of the season, to see if that's something that could leak into the following year. And I do think, when you look at week 11 on, it's 5, 5, 6, 6, 7, 9, 4 targets. Like he was involved in this offense, and I think that's here to stay in 2026. Both of these guys are guys I would definitely be invested in Dynasty. I look at them as buys. I agree. You're probably gonna have to pay a little bit more for Burton. I think that ceiling is there. Um, and but aside from that, I don't see anyone else. Raymond, not someone I think is going to carve out a significant role. I think they could always add depth, but again, I agree with you. That 1, 2, that's going to be their guys. I don't think there's going to be anyone else that they add that's going to be, stepping in the way of these guys here. Colston Loveland, I mean, very talented tight end. Obviously, had some big moments last year. I think he's going to continue to be a security blanket for Caleb Williams here in 2026. I expect his role to expand, right? Like you look at the numbers last year, and they were great. But I do expect that role to expand here in 2026. He had 81 targets, 16% target share there. He was on the field for 65% of the snaps. Cole Kmet was on the field not much more, but he was on the field many more snaps. That's 71% there, but he only had 48 targets, nearly almost less than half of those targets that Loveland had. Clearly, the roles here for these tight ends is Loveland is that pass catcher. Kmet's just sitting back and blocking there for them. Any thoughts on the tight end situation? Do you see much changing here in 2026?
Just that the second half production we saw from Loveland's here to stay.
Yeah.
From week 8 on, he averaged 6.3 targets per game. He was the tight end 4 over the span, 13.6 fantasy points per game. Heavily leaned on during the postseason as well. I think that's very, very indicative of what they intend to use for him moving forward. So arrow is all the way up on Loveland. Um, I don't have anything else to say. I think he's a slam dunk click and one of my favorite guys to watch. Like I love the Loveland and Tyler Warren combo. Like these guys are going to be stars for the next decade. I think.
Yeah, and it's just incredible how they used him. Like they used him everywhere, dude. Like in line, outside, out of the slot. He was third on the team in receiving routes run, man. And I couldn't agree more with you. I think that's here to stay. I think he's going to be a big, big part of this offense, especially I think he's going to carve out a significant role in the red zone too. His style of play, like he's just so good. I couldn't agree more. What you have? What top 5, top 7 in your board in that range?
Yeah, it sounds about right. Let me just double
Definitely
check.
top 10. I think top 10 is pretty obvious, but I just wondering where you have. Don't tell me three. Don't tell me three, Tyler. I see that smile. I see that
That's
smile
where
down
he
there,
is.
Kev. Huh?
That's where he is in
I,
ADP right now.
I
Tight end
think,
3.
yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised, bro. Like this is one of those situations where they have enough talent at the receiver position where I don't see him being the number one guy. But I do think, like you said, it's going to be so concentrated, right? Like this is going to be one of those situations where it's just so concentrated, and you know exactly where the ball's going. Kind of like, in the Rams, it's going to go to with Nakua Adams. In the Bengals, it's going to go to Higgins and Chase. Like here, it's going to go to Loveland and the receivers. Like you just know that. So yeah, man. Are you investing a third tight end? Like, are you investing that?
Dude, I don't know. I was floored to see his ADP right now. So I said tight end 3, but I didn't even say his ADP right now. He's 44.5. Uh,
Oh, wow, that's third round,
and then
right?
uh, fourth round.
No,
Yeah.
fourth round. Third, fourth round.
And then Tyler Warren is tight end 4. Like we talked about, Loveland Warren. Tyler Warren is tight end 4, but he's going 70.7 overall. So that's a 3 round gap almost.
See, that's the thing, man. Like,
Yeah.
wow. I am stunned.
I'm stunned too. I thought Loveland was going to be top 5 for sure. Didn't think top 45, top 48 overall. That's crazy.
Wow. All right, let's talk about team needs here and then the defensive side of the football and anything that you're looking at here. So what do you think that the Bears should be looking for? I have most of my team needs are on the defensive side of the football. I have edge, tackle, so defensive line, and then safety. I think it's obviously a position of need or depth, whatever you want to call it. But that's kind of what I have. I don't have anything on the offense. I'm always about, and I say this every show, and I'm going to say it every show. I don't care. I'm always about the trenches, depth at the trenches. I'm cool with that. But here there is a need at the defensive line, and I think you could use some help in the secondary. That's where I'm at here with the Bears. What do you have here?
Dude, we were in lockstep. I had edge, safety, and defensive tackle. And then I felt bad. I only wrote 3 things down. So I threw in running back as well, just because I talked about the expiring contracts of Swift and Roshan Johnson. It's more just an eye toward the future. But yeah, edge, safety, defensive tackle. They've got the 25th overall draft pick. Not much cap space, though. They have $6.3 million. That's 25th right now. So they may not be making any more big splashes in terms of free agents, but I did like that they brought in Kobe Bryant. I thought that was a
Yeah.
good ad for safety, considering they've got Kevin Biard, Jaquan Brisker, and then depth guys, CJ Gardner Johnson, Jonathan Owens, all these guys on expiring contracts. That's a lot of players to lose out on. So I wouldn't be shocked if they spent 1 or maybe even 2 picks on safeties, because we've got Bryant, who's like a primarily free safety. They need like an in the box type guy. And then we've got also probably another free safety as well, because Dennis Allen was one of those guys that did like a true 50-50 split in single high and two high. So safety to me is one of the bigger needs for them. At 25, I'm interested to see what they do, though. I could see that being edge, just because everyone puts such a high degree of faith, and faith is not the right word, but a lot of equity in the edge position. It's one of the top 4 cornerstone positions, edge. You got like quarterback, offensive tackle, edge, and then cornerback or receiver. But yeah, they're overpaying their edge guys in my eyes. Montez Sweat, a $25 million cap hit. Deo Odebengbeo, $20.5 million cap hit. They were 31st in pass rush win rate, and they're bringing these 2 back as their star guys. I think somebody else is needed.
Yeah, I agree 100%, man. I couldn't agree more with you there. Anything else before we move on to the Detroit Lions?
No, this is a fun team. If I were a Bears fan, I'd be very happy for the future. They're looking pretty good.
I think they have a great foundation. I think they have a very good, system and team in place right now. It's just minor improvements, really, right? Like this is why I'm saying I think that this is one of those teams that can continue to build off last year. Um, no major losses. Like, yeah, DJ, but they're good at the receiver position. Like, that is not terrible. So I agree with you, man. I think Chicago Bear fans should be excited, should be looking forward to the 2026 season. I definitely think this is a team that's going to be competing. We just need to see that step forward from Caleb Williams, like we talked about earlier, and to see, if they can, plug some of the little holes that they have. But other than that, very good foundation here in Chicago. Um,
Some better health at cornerback would also be really helpful for them, because they got by with a lot of turnovers. Like, this defense got
yes,
away with a lot of stuff last year.
yes, yes. Detroit Lions. So here we got a new offensive coordinator. They traded away David Montgomery. They did sign Isaiah Pacheco, a team like we talked about before that just did not meet expectations. I think the defense was continues to be a problem here in Detroit. Injuries has been an issue for this team as well. Your 2025 thoughts, and then looking ahead as the 2026 season. What are we looking at with Detroit here, Tyler?
Yeah, coming off a 15-win season, 9-8 felt really bad. I mean, poor third down conversion rates, a porous defense that was snake bitten by injuries. Like, feel like the defense was really the primary reason for why this team took a whole downfall. Um, we had to have a shift in play calling midway through. I
Yes.
thought that was also a huge thing. Bringing in Drew Petzing, interesting. I think we're going to see a lot of a run heavy approach here. It comes from Arizona, where they almost ran it too heavily, almost to a fault. So I'm hoping we do see Dan Campbell chime in from time to time to either ramp up the aggressiveness or mix up the play calling, make it less predictable. A lot of wide zone rushing attacks, West Coast passing attack, short passes, horizontal routes, which is good for a guy like Goff, a timing guy that, listen, you got a elite set of pass catchers here. Just get the ball in their hands. let their yak skills shine. I think that speaks so true with guys like Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams. I mean, across the board, like these are just athletes. Like I think this I'm not sure how the Petzing play calling will go. I just know it's probably not going to be a net negative in terms of like seeing a downward step for Goff and company. With Goff, who's just kind of, I mean, you look at his passing yards per game numbers. I think from 2024 to 2025, it was separated by 3 yards per game. You look at his passing touchdowns per game. I think it was separated by 0.18, I believe. So like it's basically he ran it back essentially from 2024 to 2025. We just need the defense to stay healthy.
Yeah, man. The defense has been an issue the last 2 years now, right? Like it's that's really been their Achilles heels here. But for me, I think this is a good this Petzing signing is good. He has a lot of experience, man. I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be a negative impact. I think it's going to be positive. Um, this offense to me has, I mean, a ton of skilled players, a lot of really good athletes, like you mentioned. So um, I'm not concerned about that. I mean, I'm very concerned about defense. So in addition to having injuries and all that stuff, they've lost a lot of players on in free agency in defense right now. Like if you look at this here, you got Christian Ezian, the safety. He's now with the Bucks. You got Roy Lopez, a tackle, Cardinals. Amik Robertson, with the Commanders. Anzalone, now he's with the Bucks. Like, and yeah, Kyle Allen, the back quarterback with the Bills. I don't care about that. But the point is, they've lost a lot of defensive players here in free agency. So obviously, a big, big need for this team here, Tyler. When you look at Jared Goff, he's pretty consistent from a fantasy standpoint. You know where you're going to get from him. It gives you that weekly, safe floor, and from time to time, he flashes that upside, that ceiling. When you're looking at him, like, does anything change for you with the new offense coordinator for him? Based on what you said, I would say no. I think it's just basically all positives for him. But when you look at it from a fantasy and an NFL standpoint, where are you at with him? Like, do you typically? I know you like the quarterbacks that run and you're not big on the pocket passers, but if you are investing in pocket passers, is he someone that you're looking at in fantasy and saying, yeah, I'm in?
Yeah, I'll be honest. He's probably more of like the guy that I'd gravitate toward in a best ball format where I take him as my second quarterback. Typically going off the board, quarterback 15, 16 right now over an underdog, right around the 100 ADP mark. But yeah, I would probably go with a quarterback that has some mobility as my first guy, and then Goff as my second guy. But he's just been consistently productive. When you look at it like from a year to year lens, even game to game, like there's some games where he doesn't like uh, throw for a boatload of touchdowns, but he'll do the Jordan Love thing where he's like throwing for 304 in a random game, and you're just like, heck yeah, I'm winning a DFS tournament with this guy. So I think he's a great second quarterback, but I don't know if he'd be a guy that I'd really be comfortable with as my number one.
Yeah, he's been someone I've been gravitating towards for many years, or not many years, but several years now. He's been the top 10 quarterback in fantasy scoring in what I think 4 straight years, 5 straight years. Just been very, very consistent here. I don't think anything changes. I'm big on this signing of the offensive coordinator. Trading away Montgomery and signing Isaiah Pacheco kind of just feels like a swap at in this stage. I don't think Pacheco is as good as Montgomery. I prefer Montgomery myself, but I also look at Pacheco and I think he's going to provide the same services at least that Montgomery does. That change of pace back, that in between the tackle runner. Don't necessarily know if he's going to be utilized as often as Montgomery was when he was here in the red zone. That remains to be seen, but do you look at this backfield and do you say with Pacheco here, they have their number two, or do you look at it and say, okay, there's still some work to be done here behind Gibbs? We know that Gibbs is going to be the guy. I don't think there's any question. I'm not concerned about Pacheco taking any time away from Gibbs either, or any opportunities, like significant opportunities. Gibbs had a phenomenal year last year. I mean, he accounted for 34% of the team's opportunities, 337 opportunities, including 243 rush attempts. 17% target share with 94 targets. Like, this is what you're going to get from a healthy Gibbs. Um, Nothing's changing here, in my opinion. But when you look at this backfield, Tyler, like, is there any room for improvement in your eyes?
Yeah, I might argue that I think the change from Montgomery to Pacheco could open the ceiling for Gibbs a bit more, where Montgomery would come in and steal touchdowns. I also view Pacheco as a slight step backwards relative to Montgomery, where I would have no problem if in a pinch, let's say Gibbs were out for a week, that Montgomery could shoulder the load and put up a very, very strong RB1 performance. I don't have that same warm feeling about Pacheco, who's kind of struggled in terms of staying healthy. He struggled with efficiency marks. He struggled with explosive runs. And keep in mind, whenever he was in Kansas City, we often saw him coming off the field in favor of Kareem Hunt, where they preferred to go with Kareem Hunt over Pacheco in the red zone. So I think we could see Gibbs' touchdown ceiling unlocked, where we no longer have Montgomery coming in for sporadic goal line steals and taking away those 6 point hammers that are so important in fantasy. Where Gibbs to me elevates above Bijan Robinson now. He's now my 101 with this trade, where you throw in the offensive line additions they've made. They added
Yes.
Cade Mays from Carolina. They traded for Juice Scruggs. I still think they would be wise to add a offensive tackle of note. Their left tackle Taylor Decker, currently a free agent. He's just kind of out there right now, waiting to see what he does. They added Larry Borum. To me, it's more of like a swing backup tackle than a starter. So getting a Mauler would be awesome for them at like pick number 17 overall in the draft class. But as far as adding anybody else, I mean, besides Gibbs and Pacheco, we've got Sion Vaki, who's kind of like a running back, linebacker hybrid prospect. Don't really know what they've gotten that. And then beyond him, not too much. So maybe they add somebody. Maybe it's a day 3 draft pick. I wouldn't say it's anybody of note, though. I think it could just be depth purposes.
Yeah, I agree. But you pointed out the offensive line additions that they made. That was an issue for them, like going into free agency, but they've addressed it. I think Borum, I agree with you. I think more of a depth piece. But I'll point this out, man. Like he played a career high in snaps last year as far as blocking snaps, and he finished with the second highest grade in pass blocking. Again, I view him as a depth piece. I don't necessarily think that he's going to be, locking down that tackle position for Detroit. But it's a good depth piece to have for sure.
Mm.
I couldn't agree more with you when it comes to Gibbs, right? Like he was someone that pretty excited about going into last year. Montgomery being there was always a thing for me. But now that he's not there, I think you're going to unlock that true ceiling that he has. I mean, how many he had 18 combined touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken, last year, right? 13, yeah, 13 rushing touchdowns, 5 receiving touchdowns. The year before for he had 16 rushing touchdowns and 16 rushing and 3 receiving. You're talking about 19, 18 touchdowns back-to-back seasons. Is this a year we got 20 plus? Like, is this the season where, oh boy, this is gonna be exciting. So he's your RB1.
Yeah, I think so.
Are you taking him 101?
I am. Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I mean,
Uh,
he's got everything you look for, like offensive environment. Like he's playing on the Lions team, that Jared Goff and company. They can move the ball well. An aggressive coach here with Campbell. The offensive line looks retooled. Like I mean, they were pretty long in the tooth when you looked at their guys last year. A lot of guys in their mid early 30s. So like retooling that line was super important. His explosive playability, his work as a pass catcher, across the board, like all reasons to get super high on him. But I think the biggest differentiator is we've got this offensive environment led by Jared Goff. So I think it's a competent offense. Let me just say that
yes.
relative to Bijan Robinson and the question mark of lefties at quarterback there in Atlanta. Not quite sure how that one's going to pan out. So that's what's giving me the narrow edge. I think the Detroit Lions are going to have more scoring opportunities, and I'm going to chase those scoring opportunities with a guy that I think could clear 20 total touchdowns.
You see, I just don't think you're wrong. You could make a case. Like obviously, Bijan is a specimen. Everyone, we all know that. We'll talk about him when we talk about that division, sure. Um, but man, like you're talking about a player who's had 50 plus receptions each and every season that he's been in the NFL, right? As a running back, okay, in an offense that they're gonna check it down. They're gonna check it down here. 94 targets, dude.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I don't see this role changing. He's had 300 plus opportunities in back-to-back seasons, and now that one player that was just cutting into his workload, especially sometimes inside the 20, and it was just frustrating. He's no longer there, and like you mentioned, they retooled the offensive line. I mean, I think ceiling season is incoming here for Jahmyr Gibbs, and I'm with you, man. I'm going to be investing in it this upcoming season. I just think that he's just super talented and a very good offense. A team that you mentioned, you is going to get a lot of scoring opportunities. I'm actually pulling up. I have a spreadsheet here that shows exactly where they were last year in red zone scoring attempts per game. So last year, all right, they were seventh in this department. They were tied fifth in this department. In 2024, all right, they were first. So this is a team that's been top five in red zone scoring attempts per game in the last two seasons. That's don't think that's changing all that much in 2026, right? So there you go. Without Montgomery, wheels up for Jahmyr Gibbs here. That was a lot of time in this backfield, but again, when you have a player like Jahmyr Gibbs, we do have to talk a lot about him. Looking at the receivers here, Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously the clear-cut number one here. He had a 32% target share last year with 175 targets. Jameson Williams took a nice step forward last year. 101 targets, 18% target share. It's really them two in the passing game as far as receivers is concerned. Third in targets was Khalif Raymond. He had 30 targets. Really not a huge role there. He's no longer there. I don't necessarily think that his void needs to be filled or it's going to impact anyone else in a huge positive way. Just a couple more targets to be spread there. But what are your thoughts in this receiving group between Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams? Are you in? Are you in this group?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Amon-Ra is as consistent as they come. He just set the NFL record for most receptions in a player's first 5 years, 547 in 5 years. That's crazy. And part of that's the era that we're in right now. The passing volume's there for him, but I'm not going to hold that against him. He's just a fantastic player. He's a rock solid round one pick for me. Jameson Williams elevated from wide receiver 24 in 2024 up to wide receiver 18 on a per game basis here in 2025. We saw the lower ADOT from like his first few years where he's 15, 16 yards down the field, now to about 12 yards or so. We could see that drop even more if the Petzing thing with horizontal passes comes into play a bit more. Maybe 10, 11 yards and just really lean on the yak skill set that a guy like JMO has. Like, I mean, you just got to get him on a shallow crosser and he can house anything. I think he's just a fantastic player. I'll still be buying again this year. And then Isaac Tesla was kind of a fun player to watch sporadically, like on island games or the holidays whenever the Lions would play. Like he was good for like one make you jump out of your seat, catch a game. It felt like that. I know the coaches put him in a lot of different wide receiver positions last year, just trying to throw the book at him in terms of learn split end, learn a flanker, learn a slot. And they were really pleased with his year one growth. So I'm anticipating a big step here in year two. I'm not saying that he's worthy of redraft status. Like, I don't think you in a 12 team PPR start sit format, you need to go after him. Maybe he's like one of your last clicks as like a bench guy. Maybe he's the first guy you pick up when bye weeks hit. But as of now, I like him for DFS. I like him as a best ball dart throw. But yeah, I think Khalif Raymond now in Chicago just opens up his ability, Tesla, to play more in three receiver sets. So these three guys, I think it's going to be pretty standard in terms of them seeing the most snaps and routes and opportunities.
But you would say would you say that like Tesla's as far as his role is going to be minimal on a week to week basis, where there's going to be random spike weeks, and he would
Yeah,
probably benefit more from an injury than anything else.
true. Yes, I think that's why. Again, I think he's best for best ball and best for DFS, where we know what the weeks where Jameson's coming in with a hammy, we know he's probably going to be used less or not at all. That's the week could use him. But yeah, Tesla's going to be the guy that puts up a random. Like he had like 6 touchdowns on 24 catches or something like that. I don't know his reception number off the top of my head, but he was catching a lot of scores on very few opportunities.
I think he scored. I'll tell you right now. Was he the one that scored in like three straight? No, that was in Titans. That was DK. So he no, he did score. He like started just scoring at random. So he scored one. All right, in week 13, a touchdown on two receptions. In week 14, a touchdown on two receptions. In week 5, a touchdown on one reception. In week 1, a touchdown on one reception. Yeah, it was like that. Like there was only he scored 6 touchdowns, like you mentioned, and in four of those touchdowns were in two receptions or less games. Like that's what it was. Then there was a couple games where he had 3 or 4 receptions and he scored. But outside of that was those random like scores. So, as far as Sam Laporta is concerned, man, what do we do with him? He was kind of he had his moments last year before the injury, but where is do you think he gets his back into the groove to be that consistent tight end he was what was it, year one? Do you think
Yeah.
he goes back to that tight end?
I mean, he's coming off surgery for a fully herniated disc they're hoping best case that he'll be ready for training camp. So I'm not too bullish on drafting him at this moment. I'm not against it, but he's probably one of those guys where if I do draft a tight end like him, I would be drafting a second one very quickly afterward, where I'm just not positive he'll be ready there for us and come August, September. So I would say the good news is that historically players returning from herniated discs usually return to pre-injury production. So like we're not going to see a fall off, but they are at risk for longer term injuries and setbacks. So there is some risk with Laporta. I will say that for this year. And I'll also say that his loss, I think, has really elevated the need for leaning on St. Brown, who's just been what 9, 10 targets a game. It feels. Um, I don't know if that goes away. Maybe it goes down to 7, 8, 7, 9 or so with Laporta back in the fold. I just see St. Brown just that rapport he and Goff have is just fantastic right now. What are your thoughts on Laporta? He's a bit of a question mark where I think it's going to vary depending on who you ask.
Yeah, look, when you look at the numbers, man, like he is a very good tight end without question, but I'm concerned about the injury as well, right? I'm concerned about his how he returns. We've seen this in the past with tight ends, like they'll return, it's off to a slow start. Um, I'm probably gonna be investing elsewhere at the tight end position. If we're being honest, I might take shots on him in best ball, but like you said, I'm gonna probably like double click the tight end position closer rounds than I'm normally, accustomed to. Because I do think that there's definitely gonna be a lot of risk when it comes to him. Um, but man, he last year, man, like you look at the numbers, man, and it wasn't great, but he had some pretty significant weeks, right? Like he had two 20 plus PPR point games. He had 16 plus point game. I think that's going to be good, especially in best ball when you're not, having to guess when those weeks are going to come. I don't know if we're going to return to consistent production immediately. That's my thing with him, and that's my concern. I think eventually, yes, he has all the skill sets, all the tools to be that tight end. I just think it could take some time here to get back in the groove of things here. So yeah, I'm not like super bullish on him going into the season. I am still very bullish on him long term, though. I do think he's a very good tight end, and I think he's going to be a big part of this offense once he's 100% ready, and he's 100% comfortable on that football field. So for me, I think he's going to be a big part of this offense. But I couldn't agree more. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, a healthy Laporta or not, I'll tell you this: Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to see 9 to 10 targets a game, no matter who's healthy on this offense. I couldn't agree more. Like he's just that guy, And when Jared Goff is looking for someone, it's St. Brown. Like every quarterback has their guy. That is it for Jared Goff. So St. Brown, 10.3 targets per game last year. That's not going anywhere. Anything else here, as far as the offense and stuff, before we talk about some of the team needs?
No, I think we had on the heavy hitting stuff.
Team needs for me, I have defense, right? If we're being specific, I'll say edge. I think they could definitely use edge. I think cornerbacks here could be very helpful. I think offensive tackle, like we talked about, is important as well. But outside of the offensive tackle, I think this offense is really good. But just revamp this defense. Like I really want to see Detroit with just a good defense, like right, just respectful defense. They'll take away from the passing volume. Sure, this is still going to be an aggressive offense, anyways. Um, but just give this offense and this team a chance. Like that's what it really is. You can't be allowing a shitload of points every week and not putting pressure on the quarterback. None of that. And win football games. So that's where I would be focusing here. I think that they should be looking at edge, cornerback, linebacker, defensive line, all of that stuff. But defense is the primary focus. That's what I have written down here, Tyler. Where are you at with that?
Yeah, same positions of need. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson, 100 total pressures last year. The next closest guy was Al Qaeda Muhammad, 53. He's a free agent. The only other edge players on their team with 10. No, wait, let me rephrase that. Those were the only two players at the edge positions on this Lions team that cleared 10 plus total pressures last year. They are losing Marcus Davenport, Josh Pascal, like two other edge rushers. They're losing a pair of interior defensive linemen, DJ Reader, Roy Lopez. Like that front is just thin. You need to get a starter across from Hutchinson. Then you need another rotational piece so that Aiden Hutchinson can last 17 games. You need some help here. Just so retooling that defensive front, I think it's super, super important. They know that. They've been trying to go after it for years. They've been making some half-ass signings, I guess, in free agency in past years. It hasn't really worked out. Looking at you, Davenport. Um, Nickel, I think like the Meek Robertson, he left in free agency. Brian Branch is coming off a torn Achilles. So a guy that can play down in the box, like a slot safety hybrid, would be a good pickup. And then linebacker, they lost Alex Anzalone, as you mentioned. He went to Tampa Bay. So getting somebody next to Jack Campbell would be super important as well. Yeah, there's just a lot of needs here on this defense. They're letting a lot of players go, which I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing, considering how many faults this defense had, but they definitely need to retool it, though.
Yep, I couldn't agree more, man. Like they just, it's a big need. It's been a big need for them. I know they've dealt with injuries, but you as a team, you see, okay, we've dealt with injuries. It's been the issue. Well, get the depth then. If you have the foundation, get the depth. Like that's really like they just need to focus on this defense, man. So yeah, I think this team will be competing though in this division. Like this is a good team as well. I big fan of Dan Campbell. I think he's a phenomenal coach. So just interested to see what happens here in Detroit, man. If they can really retool this defense. Looking at Green Bay, man. So the big news here as far as coaching changes is defensive coordinator. They got Jonathan Gannon. Some losses here in free agency. They lost Malik Willis, the backup quarterback. Romeo Dobbs, no longer with the Packers. He went to the Patriots there. Quay Walker, and then Kingsley Inagbari, the edge there. They lost them. So some pretty, I think, notable names here gone in free agency for Green Bay. I think this is another team that kind of fell short last year, right, of expectations, especially, after they got Parsons and I know he got injured, but it was a team that I think expectations were pretty high. What were your overall thoughts on Green Bay last year? And then going into this season, what are some changes here that we're looking to make if we're Green Bay?
Yeah, I think it all kind of fell apart when they lost Tucker Kraft and was that week 8, and then
Yes.
week 10 we had or week 11 we had the Josh Jacobs knee injury, and from there just kind of snowballed out of control. They had one, two, three, 4 straight losses to end the year. Not ideal. So I think the timing of adding Mika Parsons was just unfortunate because I think that the offensive setbacks had already kind of been put in motion for them just not to be able to make a deep postseason run, unfortunately. But there's a lot of good things in terms of the infrastructure here. I liked the additions of Javon Hargrave. He comes
Yes.
over from the Vikings, so he's still from a division rival. And then he also reunites with Jonathan Gannon. Both these guys played together in Philadelphia. Thought that was a good signing. But they lost some good pieces here. You mentioned it, quite a number of them. So they've got to do some work here. And this team does not have a first round pick after the Parsons trade. So they're not working with a bunch of room here in terms of the ability to make significant draft picks.
Yeah, man. Again, it's a team that I think, look, there's a good foundation, like you said. But I do think that there's work to be done here. You look at Jordan Love, and he is entering year 6. And I'll be honest with you, man, like I think he did an okay job. I think he's done a pretty good job. But would you agree where he still hasn't taken that step, like that step that we've talked about with Caleb Winters, right? Like that last step in the progress. Do you think that Love has failed to meet that as so far in his career?
Yeah, I think so. This past year, he actually looked really good though in terms of like a lot of advanced stats. He was quarterback 2 in EP per play, quarterback 3 in completion rate over expectation. Um, the fantasy production wasn't there though. Quarterback 17 weeks 1 through 16 when healthy. I'll just say his splits with and without Tucker Kraft were pretty wild in terms of his completion rate and yards per attempt. So I mean, it's like a big step backward to close out the year. And he was also a guy that was battling injury. Was it 2 years ago now? He entered the season off a
Yes.
knee injury, kind of limited his mobility. So what we've seen from him so as far as like in this offense with Matt LaFleur, is basically you're just as likely to get a multi-passing touchdown outing from him as a 1 or 0 passing touchdown game from him. So throw in the lack of rushing, and for fantasy, you're really hunting for explosive pass plays or passing touchdowns. And that's a really thin bet to make week in and week out. He's not really a fantasy quarterback that I'll ever really kind of covet or try to go after. Um, but he is surrounded with some pretty good weapons. But I don't know. To answer the question, does he make that leap forward to taking over and get the Packers to the Super Bowl? I'm a little sheepish on that one.
Same, same. I'll tell you this. I think he's played good. Like I agree with you. Like when you look at, he was top 10 in on target percentage passes last year. Like so, that's a good number for me. He had the highest completion rate of his career in seasons where he's played more than 4 games. So like there's obviously some steps forward. He had 23 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. The 6 interceptions, the fewest since, since his, I mean, the second fewest. Or the fewest since he became that guy, the starter for them, and has played more than 15 or at least 15 games. So I think there's a lot of good numbers here, but I don't think that he's taken that, where he becomes an elite quarterback. I agree with you, man. Like I am always gun shy when it comes to him because he's so erratic. Like it's just like he has, and then his ceiling is significant, but I don't know if it's worth the risk of the erratic. So I prefer him in best ball. He's not a redraft guy for me. I will have shares of him in best ball, but the problem with him is he's so tough to stack too, right? They spread the ball here a ton in Green Bay, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, I mean overall, man, I think he's a solid quarterback. He's been what QB5, QB17, QB14 overall, and then you look at points per game. He's been QB7, QB20, QB20, like in that range. So you're getting a QB2 in Jordan Love with random spike weeks, and that's how I view him. He's going to be a QB2 on my board this year as well. But one again that in redraft formats, not overly optimistic and not overly excited to be rostering each and every year here. You look at this backfield for this team here. You mentioned Jacobs, getting hurt there towards the end. What are you looking at? Do you see any changes here? Are they going to do anything to add behind Jacobs? Are they good with, some of the other running backs they have in this backfield? What are you seeing here in Green Bay going into 2026? Because I think, look, I think when Jacobs is healthy, you have a very good running back. He's been very productive for them when healthy. We since they got him, there was an issue. There was concerns when he first signed because of his down year in the Raiders, but I haven't seen any of that here in Green Bay. This is a team that has a pretty solid offensive line. So for me, I'm good with Jacobs, but the problem with him is, the wear and tear. Like you have to be a little bit concerned there. So if you're expecting that, what are we doing here in Green Bay? Do you add more depth here? Like, where do you see this going?
Yeah, I know the front office and the coaching staff alike both really, really high on Jacobs. I argue he's the engine of this offense. From weeks 1 through 10, he was RB6 in fantasy points per game before the injury started accumulating. Finished the year laboring through a knee injury, so he continued to play through it. So we saw his efficiency marks drop. We saw his volume drop. He fell just shy of the 1,000 yard mark. And like when you look at the advanced stats, they also kind of plummeted as well when you take it in totality. I'll add the offensive line was just middling at best, 17th in run block win rate, 22nd in yards before contact per attempt. So adding some new guys there would be wise for them. I know that they let go of Elgton Jenkins recently. He just signed with Cleveland. But they'd be wise to bring in Rasheed Walker, their left tackle. I don't know why they haven't brought him back. Very weird process going on there. I know he's not like a great run blocker, but I think he's somebody that would definitely help this offensive line. To answer the question about other guys, well, let me just finish with Jacobs. I'm pretty bullish on Jacobs to make a bounce back. I would just like to see him get back fully healthy and get like good reports out of camp that he's on track to heal and everything. We haven't gotten those reports quite yet, but I just know that the team loves him and he's been so productive prior to the knee contusion. I'm just really eager to see him get back to that level. And then when you factor in the guys behind him, Emmanuel Wilson, their RB2 last year as a free agent. Marshawn Lloyd remains an enigma. We've all
Yes.
been waiting to see whatever happens with him. Just too many injuries. Maybe we see them spend a draft pick addressing the position. I think that's something we could see. Jacob's age and his contract situation make a get out of contract thing very viable for them in 2027 should they go that route. But for now, it's still Jacob's backfield to own. But I would like to see them add somebody. Problem is, they've got 2 picks in the top 100 and then a lot of like day 3 selections. So it's not going to be a guy that has a lot of capital. It's not going to be a lot of guy. It's not going to be a guy that has an elite skill set. It's going to be a guy that's primarily picked up for depth purposes.
Yeah, and unfortunately for them, right, there isn't much out there in free agency right now. Like Rashad White. I'm not. Who cares, right? Like,
Yeah, I'd rather take a swing on a rookie.
yeah, same here. Same here. I could see them doing it, but like you said, it's not going to be a high draft capital. I mean, look, Jacobs, since he's joined the Packers, top 10 in PPR points per game in both seasons, right? Like he's producing. He's been a huge part of their success, like really, really huge part of their success. So I agree with you. He's been someone I've been bullish on since he's been with Green Bay. And I that's not changing this year. When you look at this receiving group, Tyler, talk about a fucking nightmare. Like that's the only way to describe it here. It's a nightmare in Green Bay. Talk about spreading the ball here. You have Christian Watson. He played 10 games. In those 10 games, a 20% target share. Romeo Dobbs, 19% target share across 16 games. Jaden Reed played 7 games. He had a 14% target share. Wicks played 14 games, 13% target share. Matthew Golden played 14 games, 13% target, or 12, sorry, 12% target share. Buddy, so we're good. We got Romeo Dobbs out. All right. So he was a 5.3 target per game guy. What happens here in Green Bay? Like, are we going to see a little bit more Watson? Are we going to see a little bit more Golden? Like, what are we going to see here into? I know Tucker Craft is going to be a big part of, when healthy, he's going to be a big part of this offense. There's no question about that. But if we're looking at this receiving group, are you sold with what they have here? Like, are you convinced that this is good enough to play in 2026?
I never really understood the Matthew Golden selection when you had a guy like Watson on the field. They just never really anticipated Watson returning in full, but he looked fantastic. I got to say, I was all the way out on Christian Watson last year. Every medical report that I read, like in the offseason, was pointing toward him having a back half season return. Generally, those guys are kind of eased back into action, and then maybe if a team's set up for the postseason, we get to see a ramp up in production. He returned a little bit earlier than what we were thinking, and he just frankly looked great. 17.5 yards per reception, 6 touchdowns in 10 games, career best in receptions per game, yards per out run, targets per out run. And it seemed like Love seemingly connected with him on a go ball every single game. It felt like at least one go ball. We were seeing at least the opportunity for it.
Yes.
And then you got Matthew Golden there, who was kind of like he saw an early uptick in usage while Watson was out, while Jaden Reed was battling through injury. He's got the round one draft capital, but I just view him as a redundant asset. So does anyone emerge here between Watson and Golden, two guys that I view as like field stretchers? No, I'd be really pressed to say one does. And then Jaden Reed's locked into a slot heavy role where, for whatever reason, Green Bay decides to limit his on field playing time and restrict him just to the slot. Last year was marred by injuries, but we've consistently seen him flash. He's looked great when given opportunities, especially near the red zone. So I'd be a buyer on Reed in dynasty formats. He's currently on an expiring contract right now. And I think the next team likely isn't going to pigeonhole him just to the slot only role. But to answer the question that you asked me, who makes the biggest step forward, I kind of want to say Tucker Craft. Just stud across the board, elite marks and yards per outrun, targets per outrun, yak per reception. I do think that the departure of Dobbs could make Kraft as the biggest beneficiary in terms of being Jordan Love's go-to guy. Currently tight end 6 right now, round 8. I really like that price tag for Kraft, despite him coming off injury.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. So like for perspective when it comes to Watson, because I was out too. Like personally, I was out, not interested. From week 8, let me hold up. From week 8 on, all right. Where do you think he was as far as wide receiver? He was wide receiver
Oh,
17 in points, in fantasy points. He was wide receiver 17 in PPR scoring. I looked at that number. I'm like, man, that's impressive. Um, I think he. Do you? I'm okay with him. Where is he going? Do you have the ADP right now for Watson?
I do, yeah. Let's just do all Packers. We can look at it.
Yeah.
So Christian Watson is wide receiver 29 right now.
Oh, that's expensive.
Yeah, 57 overall.
See, that's expensive.
And then we've got a gap. Jaden Reed's wide receiver 48. Golden's wide receiver 55. Yeah, both those guys. Jaden Reed going 108. Golden 124. So
I'm probably not going to invest in any wide receiver in Green Bay given the ADP right now. Sure, in best ball, fine. Like I'm going to play enough volume where I'm going to be invested.
Yeah.
Like I'm playing for volume, so I'm going to be invested. So like for those who say, "Oh, he's never going to be invested," if I have one of these guys on my best ball team, this is why All right, so I'm volume playing here, but I would have liked Watson's price to be a little bit cheaper for me. Like, I think if he would have been, and I know this sounds silly, right? But if he would have been in that wide receiver 37, 38 range, I might be biting. Um, but wide receiver 29 seems a bit pricey despite him being wide receiver 17 from weeks 8 on. Um, Man, I'm in lockstep with you when it comes to Tucker Craft. I always look for these round 7 through 9 tight ends where I feel like they can exceed expectations by a wide margin. And he's one of those guys. You mentioned the numbers, man, and you look at what he was doing in the beginning of the season, just so productive. 9.9, 24.4, 5.9, 10.6, 12.3, 16.8, 33.3, then 4. But dude, like that 4 was when he got hurt. Like,
Right. The Steelers
like
game. Yeah.
Yes. So, you know what I'm saying? It's like, dude, like, it was just such a good like first half of that season for Tucker Kraft. He was pretty much he became one of the more expensive tight ends in DFS too. Like it was like, so I do think that there's, elite level production there from Tucker Kraft when healthy. And I think I would not be stunned. Like this is one of those situations where I would not be stunned if he is the primary, target in Green Bay. Like if he has the highest target share when healthy. Like I would not be stunned there if that happens. So for me, that's where I'm at. I think Tucker Kraft tight end 1. I'm good investing him in his price, and I do think he will be that guy for them. I really do. Um, you mentioned offensive line. Let's talk about some team needs here for Green Bay. I think offensive line, but I think the focus here is once again primarily defense, right? Like I think they could use some cornerback help. I think they could use some defensive line help, but defensive tackle. They did address that, right? What you mentioned Hargrave. They added him. That's a huge get. He's going to fill that void that they were lacking. But I always think that you can add some depth there at the position. But for me, cornerback, like that's really what you really want to focus on. The cornerback position, I think, is a position of need for Green Bay, and I could see them. You mentioned they have 2 top 100 picks. I could see one of those being a cornerback here in this draft class. So where are you at with team needs for Green Bay?
Yeah, the interior of the defense, I think that remains a big need. Even with Javon Hargrave, I think they would be really wise to bring some youth there. They've got a lot of the current guys on their current roster have expiring contracts that end after 2026. So reloading the defensive line makes a lot of sense. You can add edge to that defensive line statement as well. Rashawn Gary traded to the Cowboys. Ngabari went to the Jets in free agency. That opens up 1,100 snaps at edge. Mika Parsons isn't going to go for 2,000 snaps, guys. He can. There's only so many he can. So I think getting a guy across from him would be super wise. Again, this is a Jonathan Gannon defensive front that I think historically has been 3-4, but he's also not afraid to go with multiple fronts. So I'm very interested to see the types of players that he brings in terms of defensive tackles and pass rushers, guys that are versatile in terms of maybe having some extra size at edge, maybe some lesser size at defensive tackle, so they can do some little moving around. Very eager to see what they do in terms of the final picture here. Um, what else we got? Perimeter corner. I think that was a great call. There's a reason this team threw a late signing at Trevon Diggs. They were just hoping
Yes.
something would have worked. They brought in Benjamin St. Juste, the Commanders cast off that played a year in LAC. Just a guy, in my opinion. I don't think he's a good corner. Um, and then the offensive line, like left tackle Rasheed Walker, do they bring him back or not? We're still waiting on that one. And then losing Elk to Jenkins, I think, was also a notable transaction for this offensive line. So the trenches, man, we say it pretty routinely here. Trenches and corner. That's what we're looking at here for this team.
Yep, I agree 1,000,000% with you right there. Anything else in Green Bay that you want to talk about before we jump onto the Vikings here?
No, I mean they still got some good amount of cap space too. 26 million. Maybe they make one big move still.
Yeah, I think they're in play to make a big move as well. So and they don't have a lot of capital to make trades, but I think with the money they could make a good trade, like an impactful trade here if they needed to. We've seen them do it already, right? Like they did it last year, so we've seen them do it here. So wouldn't be surprised like if this is one of those dark horses where you're like, what the hell? Where did that come from? So that's what I see happening here. Um, Minnesota, bro, one of the biggest disappointments in 2026. Talk to me about that because to me, man, like we'll talk about any changes, any of that stuff, but disappointment in 2026. What do you see happening here? A lot of ties to Kyler Murray. He's supposed to visit with the team today. We're recording on Thursday. What do you think happens here at the quarterback? Let's start there.
Well, let's start at the top. I mean, the very top. They parted ways with their general manager. So it's been a very quiet free agency period for Minnesota after letting go of their general manager and still not having somebody here middle of March. Absolutely ridiculous that they are taking their time with this uh, uh, replacement search. So I think that's another reason why we're not seeing them be overly aggressive in terms of transactions here in free agency. I think I'm not sure how they're actually doing this in terms of like who's making these calls right now. Maybe their president, but yeah, I mean, after the disastrous year of JJ McCarthy last year, finishing among the league's worst in like multiple metrics, I think the arrival of a new general manager, a new group at the top, means there's a high probability that they bring in someone new to compete with McCarthy. And Kyler Murray seems to be the guy that's currently got the spotlight on him. I was just talking with Ray Flowers a little bit ago, where I said Kyler Murray's kind of been a free agency loser in my book because there's a game of musical chairs going on right now, and the music's about to stop. Does Kyler Murray get a seat, or is he the last one standing? I'm hoping that Minnesota's a good spot for him. I'm a huge McCarthy fan. I think he's got a lot of talent, but he looked out of place doing the simplest of things wrong last year. There's just got to be better growth there, especially after you redshirt a year. Just to observe, it seemed like he just had no feel for cadence, blocking alignment, reading defenses, just even just pre-snap penalties. I believe they were number one or number two in pre-snap penalties, which egregious. Like you got to clean that stuff up. So you got to bring in a new quarterback. Like if I were a Minnesota fan, I'd be very ticked off with the way the Sam Darnold saga just went in terms of taking them deep in the postseason and then not deep in the postseason, into the postseason, and then seeing them go to Seattle and succeed. So you got to bring in Kyler or somebody else. You at least have to bring in somebody competent other than Carson Wentz. But at least Wentz was doing some things that kind of made sense, at least from a quarterback transactional viewpoint. Hey, man, maybe this is just a bunch of word salad, but I don't know what the heck they're going to do.
Well, this is the thing. You bring up a lot of good points there, right? Like, so you have to 1,000,000% get someone to compete there. Whether you're going to bench McCarthy or not, you don't have to make that decision today. But you need to put pressure on him because I like you, like you, I also like McCarthy. I'm a big fan of McCarthy, and I'll take a big L last year. Big L. I took him in best ball. All right, I was stacking the Vikings. I was pumped. So you know what? I'm taking an L McCarthy last year. Sure. Do I still believe that he has the potential to take a step forward? Yeah. I mean, I think he hit rock bottom last year. That's the truth. Like it was just there was I don't have anything great to say about him from last season. Like just going to even the fundamentals, the basics, it's not good. Not good, unfortunately. And this is with a coach who has been great with quarterbacks. O'Connell, like he's just been phenomenal with quarterbacks. I still think that the ceiling is there. I'm still optimistic about the long-term outlook for McCarthy. That said, I definitely think that you need to put pressure on him as far as, hey, this is not your job. And I think if you put that kind of pressure on him, maybe you're going to see him take that extra step in his process to become a better quarterback. Um, I will say this: we saw this in Miami. They never put pressure on Tua. He got comfortable. He got, it was just okay. And look what happened now. It just became a shit show in Miami. You don't want to be that if you're Minnesota, right? So I definitely think they need to bring competition. Kyler Murray, all signs are pointing toward Kyler Murray being that guy. I'm not a Kyler Murray guy. I don't think that he's the answer for Minnesota. I think he's good to compete there. I think he's good to put a little bit of pressure on McCarthy, but I don't necessarily think that he's their savior by any means. I'm not Murray. I think ever since he came out, I'm a big stickler when it comes to size of a quarterback, and he's on the shorter end, dude. And it's been very clear that he struggles because of that, right? He has a good arm, he's super athletic, all that good stuff, right? But the size is just not there. We see this in the NFL. You gotta have size for the most part. There's exceptions to the rule, like there is in every position, but that's why it's called an exception to the rule. And Kyler Murray is not the exception to the rule. So I would be happy though if they sign him because I think that's gonna light some, fire in McCarthy's ass, man. Get going, bro. I really want to see him succeed here. But yeah, man, I've been very shocked at kind of how little they've done here so far in free agency, Minnesota. And you bring up a good point as to why here. So if you look at okay, so if we look at some of the players that they've we'll look at who they've lost. We mentioned Hargrave already. They lost to the Packers, and then Jalen Naylor to the Raiders. I don't see that as a huge loss. I don't know if you do, but I don't see that as a huge loss. And then as far as what they've added, they added James Pierce, the cornerback who formerly played in the Steelers. So not very active here in Minnesota. We've talked about the quarterback position a little bit. Do you think, okay, now that we talked about that, Murray coming in, do you still think week one, regardless of who they sign, they're going to give McCarthy that chance? Or do you think that that's truly up in the air?
If they bring Kyler Murray, I truly think it's up in the air. So Carson Wentz is a free agent. Do they bring him back? If they do that, then maybe it's going to be McCarthy again, because you can always fall back on Wentz later at some point. But if it's Murray, I think it could be a legit competition that goes throughout camp.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. What do you do with McCarthy and Dynasty out of curiosity?
You're old. I mean, you can't sell at rock bottom. You could try and buy if you'd like. Maybe you get, maybe you do like an exchange of like somebody that's competing, and you give them like a Marcus Mariota in exchange for their JJ McCarthy. Like, you got to be at two different ends of the spectrum though, in terms of like a team competing and a team selling, trying to buy McCarthy off a team that's competing that doesn't need him, and you're a seller that has like an aging veteran that has maybe a 1 year shelf life on him. But that's it. Like, it's a very narrow group of players that I think can make sense for it. But I'd be interested in Dynasty still. I'm not ready to jump bait. He's still entered the league very young, and some of these guys just take some time.
Yep. I agree with that right there. I am in the business of buying low if you can,
Yeah.
but that's it. I'm not selling because I still my expectations pretty high still. And like you said, you're gonna be getting cents on the dollar, so it's not really worth it. When you're looking at this backfield, Aaron Jones, free agent. Uh what the hell are you doing back here? Like they haven't made any moves, and right now, what is it? Jordan Mason? Is this
Mhm.
who their guy is right now? I'm not against Jordan Mason, but I definitely think you need to upgrade here. I think it's a position of need. Where are you at with the running back position? Because you're looking at this backfield and you have Aaron Jones last year, 30% of the team's opportunities, 40%, 47% of the team's rush attempts. Jordan Mason, 21% opportunities, 42% of the team's rush attempts here. I don't know what to say, Tyler. What are we doing with this backfield going into 2026?
I'm really struggling. Like, I thought I read Jones was a free agent. I'm seeing on Spotrac that he's still part of them under contract. Do you know if Jones is definitively a free agent? I'll just say, while you look that up, that Jones had one of the worst years of his career. It was very clear that like he hit the rock bottom, career lows, and so many advanced stats and efficiency metrics: RB 32 in explosive run rate, RB 26 in success rate, RB 43 in missed tackles forced per attempt. He was dead last in yards after contact per attempt. So anytime he missed a tackle, he barely got any yardage after it. So I'm not sure if he's still in Minnesota or not. I know Jordan Mason, on the flip side, looked fantastic in a lot of these rushing metrics, despite him playing behind Jones in a lot of scenarios. So I think Jones is. Let me rephrase. I think Jordan Mason could be a strong 1B, but you still need the 1A here.
So now that you said that, so it was initially reported that the Aaron Jones was going to be released, right? That was the report. So he was set to be a free agent. They actually restructured his contract yesterday. All
So I
right.
saw.
So
I saw
yeah,
that.
so they restructured his contract yesterday. So he's taking a pay cut to a base salary of 5.5 million. All right. So now we got Jones back, but Mason's still in the picture. So I think we're going to see a very similar scenario, right? So we no longer need a running back here in Minnesota, ladies and gentlemen. All right, there you go. I had like it was so like wishy washy, right? His situation was so wishy washy. You just really didn't know. So there you go. I stand corrected. He is not if set to be a free agent. He is going to be staying here in Minnesota, but on a base salary of 5.5 million. I'll tell you this: I think Jordan Mason is going to be the 1A to Aaron Jones is 1B. I feel like that could be it here, but I do think a committee is certainly in order in Minnesota. Do you agree with that? Like, you feel like a committee is in order?
Yeah, we saw it last year. I envision it staying the same. I just don't know who will be in each specific role. I mean, like they can keep Jones restructured for now. Doesn't mean they don't cut him later.
Yeah. I mean, it was thought about, right? Like, it was definitely a possibility. So, yeah, it's a situation I keep monitoring. Are you investing in any of these running backs in your fantasy leagues?
I probably will not be because I want to see who the quarterback is first because I think that drives the efficiency of the overall offense, the ability to score touchdowns, and we know how important touchdowns are to the running back position. So I'll probably wait a bit, but right now I'm not eagerly getting on that action.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Let's talk about the receiver position, dude, and talk about a disappointing year for Justin Jefferson there. It was not a good season. He finished wide receiver 21. Okay, so not a good season for his standards. Let's start talk about there because he still had 84 catches, 1,000 yards. Like, it was a decent season for a receiver. Two touchdowns though. That was the big number that stood out to me. Just two receiving touchdowns coming off of a season before we had 10 touchdowns. Really hurt his bottom line, in my opinion. Um, I'll say this, man. It wasn't Justin Jefferson. Like, it's not his, doing here. It was just the quarterback play was so bad, like so bad that he just couldn't get anything going. But where are you at with Jefferson this season? And then the rest of this receiving group, Jordan Addison, obviously Naylor's gone, but the rest of this receiving group, going into 2026.
I hate to give like a half-assed answer on this podcast, but I'm still waiting to see what we do at quarterback because until we get clarity there, I think it's fair to be really out on this Minnesota group as a whole until we see any kind of step forward. Just given how poor we saw the play from JJ McCarthy in year two, as technically his first year playing. Um, the only player worse in EPA and CPOE composite was Shador Sanders. Like, there's a lot of poor play from JJ McCarthy that really hindered the ability of Jefferson being a consistent producer. I'm looking at his ADP right now, wide receiver 6 at 12.7. So I don't want to spend a round one selection on Jefferson. If we're going to get a wide receiver 2 return, I think you can. Jeff talks about it often in his podcast where you want to build a strong foundation in the early opening rounds. Jefferson is far from that. So I will probably be a little bit out. I know this guy's a fantastic receiver, one of the best in the league. Um, where we were worried about this 2 years ago with Sam Darnold when he took over under center, going from Kirk Cousins to Darnold. Darnold lived up to the billing. Didn't see the same thing here with McCarthy, unfortunately. So until we get clarity there, I'm just kind of going to be apprehensive about Minnesota as a whole.
Yeah, I agree, man. Like, you want to take very little like as little volatility as possible in the early rounds, and I just don't think you can guarantee that with Justin Jefferson. As good as he is, I know he had the 30% target share, but look what that got him. They got him a wide receiver, the top 24 wide receiver. Wasn't top 10, wasn't top five. It was top wide receiver 21 in PPR scoring. So that definitely is a concern for me here. The same could be said about Jordan Addison, right? Like, it's really depending on the quarterback position for Addison. TJ Hawkinson, another flop last year. I'm taking L's on this podcast, bro. I was on Hawkinson last year. Did not pan out to expectations, not even remotely close there. He had a 16% target share, 66 targets there, but just was abysmal. Like, that's the only definition I have for him. Like, that one word describing his season last year was abysmal. Tight end 26, just didn't do anything. Really couldn't get much going. Now, I don't know if that's a product of the quarterback play alone or if that's just a product of, all right, he returned from, hasn't been able to be that same guy since the injury, right? Like, maybe that's it too. Um, where are you at with Hawkinson? I know it's dependent on the quarterback, but as far as overall, like, is he someone at this stage right now you just don't see the point in investing? Do you think he'll get back to the glory days?
Again, I think it's going to be QB dependent, but yeah, last year was really rough for him. Um, what do I want to say here? I don't think you need to go this path. I think there are probably higher upside plays on the board. He's going tight end 25 right now. There are probably higher upside guys up and around that vicinity where you don't need to make that reach. I also know that he's got a salary set up where he could be a cut candidate once they finally get the general manager in the door. Don't know if they'll do that late, given how many players have already been picked up in free agency. But I wouldn't be shocked if that were a transaction that unfolded because I don't know. I could see them saving some money here. This team didn't have like any draft picks last year. Maybe they trade them. Maybe they get some more capital. They finally have some good draft picks here entering 2026. So I'm just eager to see what we're going to get here in terms of this front office and what happens here on out because Minnesota's just question mark, question mark, question mark right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of a lot of damn question marks in Minnesota. Unfortunately, right? Like we'll have more answers about Minnesota later in the process, obviously, but there's a lot of uncertainty in so many aspects of the team, right? So I couldn't agree more with you there. All right, let's look at some team needs here, and I think we're both in agreement. Quarterback is one, right? I'm not sold on McCarthy yet. As far as despite us being, excited about him still, like we need to see it, come into fruition before we can say, okay, we're good here. I still think running back is a position of need because we don't know what's going to happen here. But I do think the primary focus is in that secondary. I think a safety cornerback situation here, I think can improve. This is a team that, we know likes to apply pressure. We know likes to get to the quarterback. So you need to have good players in the secondary here. So I think beefing up that secondary is a big, big thing for this defense and this unit. But where are you at as far as team needs are concerned here, Tyler?
Yeah, same lockstep again, man. We're looking at the same things. Harrison Smith retiring, I think, is a big loss for them at safety. They lost Cam Bynum the year prior. He went over to Indianapolis. And safety plays an important role in Flores' scheme. So getting somebody that's notable there, I thought they'd go after one of the big free agents. Didn't see that happen yet. Maybe they still do. But I think that's a huge need for them. Cornerback, I liked what Isaiah Rodgers offered on the outside. They did the thing with Byron Murphy where he does the outside against base sets and then kicks into the slot against three receiver sets. I'd like to see Murphy ideally in the slot full time and then bring in a notable guy on the outside. Because again, this Flores team, they love to blitz and it kind of just puts their defense back into too high coverage and zone where they're just really kind of trying to deflect balls really. I think getting a lengthy guy on the perimeter would be really wise for them. So I think those are the two big needs. Defensive line, Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave both let go this offseason. So retooling the interior there and QB and running back. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. Areas of need.
Yeah, I would say this: like the Vikings are probably the team with the most holes in this division, but they also have really good pieces in place too, right? So like it's not a team that's that far off. They just got to get the quarterback position right. I think that's really where it's at, and the quarterback position in the NFL is one of the most, if not the most important positions right now, right? Today's NFL, you need a good quarterback in order to compete here. So for me, really interested to see what happens there. But again, I think you're going to see a lot of their focus and their attention. Look, ultimately, the way I see this playing out is they sign Kyler Murray and they figure that that's going to be their quarterback situation. And then they're going to focus a lot on the defensive side of the football. From what I've read, by the way, we've been talking. From what I read, O'Connell's actually working as the GM, which is freaking mind blowing. Like he's kind of like operating as such, helping in that department. So a jack of all trades. That actually makes me a little bit excited because I feel like he's a sharp dude. Um, so yeah. Anything else here in Minnesota, Tyler?
Let's say that we do get Kyler Murray signed here and he's a starter for week one. How far do you think this team goes? Are we looking at a 500 squad?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think so too. It kind of keeps
I,
them in purgatory, unfortunately, where they're not benefiting from a high draft pick, but he does just enough to, I don't know, upset the Lions once, steal a win from the Packers, and then go a mixed results the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think 500, maybe a little bit over, like what, 9-8,
Yeah,
something like that. Nine, 9-8, like 9-8, 8-9, like that record. I will say this, right? And I'm not a Kyler Murray guy, but I will say this: if there is a coach in the NFL that's going to get the best of his quarterback, I think O'Connell's one of those coaches. I think he's amongst the top coaches when it comes to really getting the best of his quarterback. So I you never know. You really never know. I think Kyler Murray's ceiling is capped, right? Personally, that's my opinion. But that doesn't mean that my opinion is 100% right. I do think O'Connell's a very good coach, and Murray has shown the ability to play at a high level at this league, right? So it's not like he can't do it. Um, so I'm interested to see what happens. I truly am interested because I think it'll make this offense a little bit more fun too, right? Because
For sure.
now you got Jefferson, you got a mobile quarterback. Like you really haven't had that in Minnesota. Like again, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I'm not a Kyler Murray guy, so I will say that. So I'm pessimistic about that. But there is a world where that happens, and that would be fun. Um, any final thoughts here, Tyler, before we get going?
Now, this is a lengthy one, man. We had a lot to
Yeah.
cover with this NFC North, but it was fun. I'm glad we did this.
Yeah, man, we talked about this, a very interesting division, a lot of moving parts, a lot of, things to talk about. So it is a lengthy podcast. Not all of them have been this long, but yes, definitely one that had a lot of information there. Tyler, why don't you let everyone know what you got cooking, where they could find you, and all that good stuff like you do each and every podcast, bro.
Yeah, we are doing these division by division podcasts here in the Mind of Marsal. They've been a lot of fun to recap and review. It's helping me with my draft prep as well. Speaking of draft prep, we are now unveiling our rookie profiles over at fantasyguru.com. We've got 3 or 4 on the website now, depending on when you listen to this podcast, but I'm trying to put out about 4 to 5 a week. So we've got a good number there. Hit a few wide receivers on my end for week 1, looking at some more in week 2. And then you can catch all my work and all the stuff that I'm working on here over at fantasyguru.com. I'm always in our Discord answering questions and socials, just Twitter, dx.com at Tyler Buecher.
Make sure you are checking out all of his work, ladies and gentlemen. I always talk about it. It's great stuff, great analytics. Just the approach is awesome, and the content is always great when it comes to Tyler Buecher. As usual, brother, I appreciate you hopping on the podcast with me, talking. And like you said, it's good. Part of the process. We're learning, we're getting things, and just gathering a ton of information. It's still early in the year. There's so many moving parts. We still haven't had the draft. The free agency is still open. So a lot of things can change between now and the start of the season. But this is a really good place to start here as we look back last year and looking ahead at this year, right? With all of the moving pieces thus far, coaching changes. So always excited to do these kind of podcasts here with you, bro. So you can find all of my work over at fantasyguru.com. You can also follow me on the Twitter machine at Armando_Marsal, as well as Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Mind of Marsal. Remember, if you're enjoying the podcast, enjoying the show, please make sure you follow, rate, review, like the podcast wherever it is you're consuming it. For the great Tyler Buecher, I am Armando Marsal. Hopefully you enjoyed this week's journey through the Mind of Marsal. Until next time, folks.